right, hello, and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Lane Kawaoka, who is in probably an equally sunny Hawaii right now, Honolulu, Hawaii.
Yeah, very similar to San Diego for sure.
Yeah. And you're a former engineer turned professional real estate investor and fund manager with a portfolio exceeding 2.1 billion, self-made first generation millionaire. You achieved real estate millionaire status by age of 31, left corporate engineering by 35. And since 2016, you're, how do I pronounce that here? HUI,
Yeah, our investor group,
your
yeah, our
investor group.
ecosystem.
Has syndicated more than 250 million in private equity, returned 450 million in distributions to investors. And you are the author of The Wealth Elevator and the prior bestseller Journey to Simple Passive Cash Flow. And you host the popular Wealth Elevator podcast and YouTube channel. And that's what we're going to talk about today is that Wealth Elevator book. So, but first of all, I'd like to know when you were an engineer before you made the pivot, right, or the trend. What did you have an aha moment to sort of say that you decided that okay, this wasn't the path to the kind of wealth or retirement that you were looking for?
Yeah, I think for me, when I had that first rental property and I added it up all the way I was making money,
Mm,
appreciation, tax benefits, the tenants were paying down my mortgage for me, so I was having the equity build up there too, and then like cash flow every month, right? Because I
yeah.
was, the mortgage was less than what
Mm,
my rents were. And I added all that up and I was like making like 20-30% per year. And I was like, why would I not want to do this
mm,
as opposed to the traditional 401k stuff?
right.
Like, it seemed like a no brainer. And that's kind of where I realized I started to interact with other accredited investors and started to realize like this is how the wealthy build money very quietly, not the traditional methods of their retirement accounts.
Yeah, I mean, because like you say in the book, even in the introduction, that so many people are caught like on the hamster wheel of money and they get trapped in it. So, what inspired you to create the wealth elevator framework?
Yeah, so there was a lot of books written out there for finances, right?
Hmm.
Dave Ramsey, Susan Orman, I think are great books, but a lot of these books, even Rich Dad Poor Dad is pretty much written more for people who are getting started. They need to
Mm.
keep a budget, not
Yeah.
spend money they don't have. Very few books out there were written specifically for the accredited investor. So, accredited investor is somebody who makes over $200,000 a year or net worth $1 million or greater,
Hmm.
which, maybe people call them the one percenters, but there's really a lot of people out there in that category, especially a lot of business owners
Hmm.
that are kind of quietly like confused on what to do because you see all this financial advice on TikTok and YouTube shorts, and a lot of it is predicated to guys getting started.
Hmm.
And what I started to realize is as I would look back in my journey, I was just working the day job as an engineer, saving maybe 30, 40, 50 grand per year. And then
Hmm.
as I started to acquire more and more rental properties, my net worth grew. But I went through several stages, defined stages. And that's kind of what I might put in my book. We kind of walk through each of those stages and how the investment philosophy changes in each of those.
Yeah. Yeah, so in your book you have it, the five floors of the wealth elevator. Can you just briefly outline the different stages and what the differences are? And also, is this kind of following your path? Is this Does this come from your personal experience that you built this model?
Yeah, everything I mean, I'm in EO, so everything we talk
Yeah.
about is experience share. We don't make stuff up off of stuff
Hmm.
we listen to on a podcast or read in
Right.
a book. So these are all the defined parts of the journey. Um, that said, the first floor of the wealth elevator is called the basement. I personally was lucky enough. I was never homeless. I
Hmm.
had a good paying job. I went to college. So I kind of started not on the basement level. Basement level is you're making less than $50,000 a year. You're in credit card debt. You have less than, you know, pretty much no net worth. I
Hmm.
started on the first floor, graduating college. This is kind of where I think the name of the game is to buy little rental properties.
Hmm.
On my website, we used to teach people how to buy little rental properties remotely. Um, and we give away that information for free there. But once I had maybe 11 rentals in 2015, I was kind of getting on that accredited investor level status, which
Right.
we define as the second floor of the wealth
Mhm.
elevator. And I got lucky because I started to interact with a lot of these accredited investors, and a lot of them had the same type of pedigree as myself, good paying jobs, own rental properties for a decade, but they're all dumping their rental properties because they just weren't scalable.
Mm.
In 2015, I had 11 rental properties, and I had maybe an eviction or two every single year. Some kind of big catastrophe that happened every quarter, like a tree fall in the house, a flood out in the basement. Not a huge problem because I had a property management, but all that created was $3,000 of passive cash flow per month. Most of my clients today aspire to like ten to $15,000 at
Mm.
least. So owning little rental properties just isn't going to get you there. And the more and more you get, the more legal liability you have. And that was kind
Mm.
of where on the second floor of the wealth elevator and the third floor of the wealth elevator, you start to transition to being a passive investor into larger syndications and private placements.
Yeah, yeah. So talk a little bit about syndications for people who don't understand what those are or have a limited knowledge of them.
Yeah, like the analogy I like to use is like an airplane. In the airplane, you have a cockpit of the general partners, the operators who put the deal together. They
Mhm.
source the deal, they operate it. They pretty much, and they get the debt in their own name too, and
Yeah.
they take the legal liability. Where and the passive investors just come in, pay their money, and board on the plane and get in and coach, and you can get into dozens and dozens of these planes.
Mhm.
I've been in maybe well over 100 of these things to diversify. And the big thing here is you're closer to the action.
Mhm.
You're cutting out all the middlemen. And that's my big problem with the 401k system
Yeah.
is it's not, I mean, I like the tax benefits and stuff like that, although you're kind of negated with real estate. You get probably better tax benefits there.
Mhm.
But the problem with the 401k is you're stuck in a cafeteria of options that they want. You're
Yep.
accessing the investment world through what's called the secondary access point, or what
Yeah.
I call sloppy seconds. Um, you want to get in first, right? You want primary access. So that's
Yeah.
you access them through these type of syndications, or what some people call country club deals, right? And you're
Right.
getting access directly, cutting out all the middlemen, right? And that was kind of big aha moment was a lot of people don't realize, but like, how else does Wall Street have all these big CEO salaries and big buildings? They're not doing it for free,
Mhm. Yeah.
but they're essentially taking a lot of the profits from giving people access to these types of investments. Where if you have a little bit of a network, learn about the concepts we teach, you can access a lot of these good investments out there through the primary means and cut out all the
Mhm.
middlemen.
Mhm. So when it comes to things like syndication, like some people might think, well, that sounds great, but that sounds like I need a lot of money in order to enter into things. So what are typical entry points for that?
Yeah, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like, this is not for everybody,
Yeah, yeah.
right? I mean, if you don't have a net worth of $1 million or greater, or you're not, making over $200,000 a year, in my opinion, you should just do what I did on the
Right.
wealth elevator and buy rental properties. It's not sexy. It's kind of slow, if you ask
Mhm.
me. Right?
Right.
Like, I bought my first rental property 2009. I bought a duplex a couple of years later in Seattle, and then, like I said, it took me several years later in 2015 to have 11. I mean, even at
Right.
that, that's not that many rental properties in
Mhm.
reality. But it is like watching grass grow. But
Right.
at some point, as you would imagine, you hit that hockey stick of growth and compound interest hits you.
Yeah. In the book also you dive deep into building partnerships for syndication. So what practical advice would you give to professionals when they want to evaluate, sponsors and avoid the bad deals you learned from early on?
Yeah, I mean, it's two-sided, right? Working with the right people.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, for new people coming in, and this is where we try to help people with the ecosystem and other peer LPs, is you don't know anybody. So you're likely to go invest with the people who are just happen to be the best marketers, or
Right.
somebody you just happen to know. Typically, they're not the best operators. My criteria has changed over the years, and this has gone through when I first started, I got access to just bad operators, right? And
Right.
I didn't know anybody. I didn't know
Mhm.
any better either, right? But the longer you stay in the game, you start to access more higher quality operators and sponsors. So that's on the people side. And unfortunately, that's kind of a network game.
Right.
Um, but I think even it's next is the number side. And what I didn't realize is a lot of wealthy people, they employ professional underwriting staff, and they're able to interpret the numbers of these commercial assets. Buying an apartment is just like buying a business. You have the P&Ls.
Yeah.
Typically for the last 2 years, you have the rent rolls. You can put the numbers into an analyzer and start to model it out yourself. This is where we kind of teach people how to look at deals from a passive investor's
Mhm.
perspective. Some people may put a deal out assuming the rents are going to go up 3.5% every single year. I think that's wishful thinking in this market.
Mhm.
And is a little bit more advanced, but there's a concept of what is the reversion cap rate or exit cap rate you have assumed on the deal. This is one of the biggest factors that people will play around with this one cell in the spreadsheet to kind of fudge the numbers and show a deal showing
Right.
amazing returns, where really if you underwrite it properly, it's like, I wouldn't want to invest in this. So we try to teach people like the vernacular of this and start to look these things out in deals for them to at least kind of start to learn the vocabulary. And the best analogy I can give is, if anybody's to learn how to salsa dance, right? Clumsy engineer like
Yeah.
myself, the way you tackle it is you start learning the concepts, the vocabulary, like what are the individual moves first. And
Mhm.
yeah, you got to get out and start playing the game and start dancing. But I think you start off like, what is a reversion cap rate? What is the right full assumption of occupancy on an apartment deal?
Mhm.
Is it 92%, 96%, right? Like, what is economic vacancy? Did they assume that, right?
Mm.
These are the types of things that, as you don't need to be an underwriting specialist, but things that you should be at least aware of as a passive investor.
Right. Right. So it's good to be as educated as you can. So at least you mightn't be able to do this stuff, but at least you can recognize how it's being done and what is it and why.
Yeah, I think the framework that I tell people is like the 70-20 70-20-10 rule, where, I mean, this is used in corporate America
Mhm.
quite a bit, where 10% of it is the academic learning. And we have
Yeah.
e-courses for free on our website, and people listen to my podcasts. And actually, I'm writing my next book on this topic, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's just the 10% of it.
Mhm.
The 20% is getting in an ecosystem, connecting with other investors. And that's
Yeah.
where we try to prepare people, hey, know what these terms are, know what a pref is, know what a split is,
Right.
so that if I did sit you down at one of our events with five other accredited investors, you wouldn't just be like
Yeah.
a waste of space there. And you can start to build organic relationships with people, and you can start to,
Yeah.
intellectually spar with people. That's where you learn. um,
It's
Unfortunately, the 70% is the doing it, right? You got to
yeah.
get out there
Yeah.
and do it.
Yeah. It's amazing though sometimes people don't realize how much knowing the language and the terminology and the nomenclature for a thing is a great way of connecting with people. Because as you said, right, if you're in this business forever and I show up and I don't even understand the basic terms, I mean, we're not going to get it, we're not going to
Yeah.
probably do
Yeah.
business or whatever. But at least if I've done the homework, like, read your book and I understand this stuff, I can at least have a semi-intelligent conversation.
Yeah. And that's where, unfortunately, people are selfish. I mean, like there's so many people, you got to figure out who you need to interact with to go in
Mhm.
deeper. I think our group we got some cool folks, right? They're pretty chill. They have a beer with somebody. They'll definitely
Yeah,
help out. But you definitely need to do your side of the homework, right? Educate yourself up to a certain par rate, and then, that way you're just not a total time suck for
yeah,
somebody else, right? They don't need to go through the basics with you.
yeah,
You can talk a little bit more of a higher level, than just like, because if somebody just doesn't, I don't know, it's kind of like an intern. For like, we're all business owners here, right?
yeah,
Like some interns, they put in the work. They may not be the smartest tool into a shed, but they put in
mhm,
the work, and that you can work with that, as
yeah,
opposed to the person who just, shows no initiative. And it's like, well, we know where this kid is going to go. All my effort is just going to go nowhere. So why would I
yeah,
even want to help this
yeah.
person? And not to say that that's selfish, but hey, you
Well,
you have finite resources of helping people and time.
absolutely.
You need to guide it to where it needs to go. It's not like this is your child where you're stuck with them. right?
Yeah.
This is just
No, you're
these are
right.
adults.
No, it's like sales today. Like if I show up for a call with you and the first thing I asked you is to tell me about your business and everything, you're going to go, "What? Like you couldn't even do that yourself?"
Yeah,
It's gonna
exactly.
yeah. So tell me about the floor three. So private funds. How are they different?
Yeah, the big thing here on floor 3 is more net worth gets to be about 3 to 5 million net
Hmm.
worth. And it's a little bit more of a subjective number because we have some people who live in the Midwest where things are a lot cheaper. Their kids have long gone to college, out of the house, and they may only need a couple million, 2, 3 million at, and if they invested at 4%, which, there's that 4% rule out there,
Hmm.
um, they'll be totally fine. Other families may need double that, right? So it's a
Right.
range of basically when you've hit your individual personalized financial freedom number. Or
Hmm.
what I equate to it is like, you're sending a starship up to space and at some point you break the atmosphere and you go
Right.
zero gravity. Or specifically in finances, when you have enough money where your investable money makes more money than you can spend. It's a great feeling.
Yeah.
Amazing, right? And a lot of things change at that point, right? You don't need to invest for growth. You kind of just invest more for stability.
Mm.
So in that case, you kind of maybe stop picking individual deals and you go for more diversified funds models and stuff like that. More,
Right.
but
Right.
still private, direct to the source.
Yeah.
If you
So it's
consider that.
very, it's kind of if you're a good use case would be like if you have a certain lifestyle you want to maintain, you're not looking to, you're not looking to build particularly or whatever or expand, but you want to have something where you can sustain a particular lifestyle.
Yeah, and a lot of this is dependent on your age. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
if a guy who's gonna live 30 minutes just needs $10 for his last beer. Um,
Well, I'd need a few more because I could get in a few more in the last 30 minutes.
yeah, I can get in a lot more myself. So like, we need to keep growing our money. We can't just
Yeah.
sit around. But a lot of business owners, they may have an exit, and we get a lot of those guys that will
Hmm.
exit for 5, 10 million net worth, which is a lot of money. But you can't just mess around with that and just
Yeah.
put it into T-bills. That's for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and of course, there's we have other people who are still in corporate America, still grinding away at it at the high income. So we provide, I think, the ecosystem for deal flow, and a lot of more advanced tax strategies kind of come out of our eco chambers too.
Yeah.
Investing
So,
in oil and gas, things like that.
mm,
It's the equation is not necessarily like how do I make more returns, but it's also about keeping your money too, right?
yeah, yeah,
With
yeah.
taxes.
Yeah, so I mean, taxes are obviously a really big issue, and without getting into too much detail, obviously, but what are the most powerful kind of legal tax strategies that you can employ?
I mean, real estate is a nice way of doing it from the first go. I mean, with real estate, you can take the depreciation of the asset,
Hmm.
which typically offsets a lot of the income. So that's where people say in a roundabout way that the income is tax free, but
Right.
really it's coming from the depreciation of the asset. The reason why we like these larger commercial assets is they're big enough where you can do a cost segregation, where you can extract out way more depreciation in the front end,
Mm,
maybe even 10 times, 20 times than you would in a typical year with just a little single family home.
right.
Um, a lot of people may do real estate professional status if they own a rental property or two. We find a lot of our folks just don't want to mess with rental properties because they just make too much money and they don't want to go through the brain damage of doing real estate professional status. So
Mm,
for those people, oil and gas is a mechanism to get intangible drilling costs to lower their ordinary income with or
mhm.
without rep status. I'm not going to get too much into detail
Sure.
with
Yeah.
that because I'm not a CPA. I don't give
Mhm.
tax advice. So that said, if people need a CPA, typically most of our clients change their CPAs because most CPAs don't understand this stuff, which is why they're still a CPA.
Mm,
But every situation is different. But I would probably just start off with, that's in the AI out there, right? Like how do I use oil and gas
yeah.
to lower my ordinary income?
Yeah, and just finally, like, what are some mistakes or pitfalls to avoid? If somebody's listening to this now and thinks this is great, this is where I need to get. What are some of the mistakes or pitfalls they can avoid?
Yeah, I think you gotta unfortunately get off your computer and talk to people, and that's why we
Right.
do our events. We have an annual retreat in Hawaii. You gotta be an accredited investor to attend.
Hmm.
But I think that's where I mean, a lot of us I mean, I'm an introvert these days, although this stuff gets me jazzed up.
Hmm.
But, most people, or especially the Gen Zers out there, are just super afraid of talking to people,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like, it's
they are.
crazy. Whatever. They can just rent our
Yeah.
apartments from us, but whatever.
Yeah, they make fun of the old people, but they won't be when they realize the rent they're paying is making the older people rich.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm okay with that dynamic. But, if you wanna book that trend and you
Hmm.
wanna get direct access to deals, then you gotta find other accredited investors.
Right.
If not, just be happy with your sloppy second 401k stuff,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
where you pay a lot of taxes and that stuff too.
you pay a lot of taxes and you ride that silly roller coaster of the constant up and downs and checking your 401k from one month to the next and seeing it go up and down and that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. One last thing. You mentioned accredited investor, and you pioneered accredited investor banking. What does that mean?
So one of the side strategies that we do employ is using whole life insurance, and we overfund it.
Hmm.
Um, there's a term out there, infinite banking. I don't know if it's trademarked or not,
Right.
but it's kind of synonymous with this tactic that the wealthy will do. Um, some of the reasons, there's some good tax treatment, there's good asset protection with it, but it allows your money to grow in a couple places at the same time.
Mm.
It is rather complicated on this if people really dig into it, but essentially what you're doing is you're buying a life insurance policy, overfunding it. But the key is to pay the insurance agent at least amount of commissions so that you try and keep as much as your money. But
Mhm.
your life insurance policy grows um, as an asset. Just like you were buy a
Yeah.
house, right? And then now you pay down the mortgage and you can take a loan from your own
Mhm.
house.
Yeah, yeah.
Same mechanism and the way to think about it for this life insurance. Again, I don't put these policies together. If you guys
Mhm.
need a referral to somebody who's licensed to do that, let me know. But this is where in 2015, 2016, as I became an accredited investor, I started to pay to get into a lot of rooms, interact with other accredited investors, and this trifecta of strategies, which was invest in alternative investments. And yes, you guessed it, primary access, not sloppy seconds,
Yeah, yeah.
tax benefits, right? Where you
Mhm.
can shield a lot of your taxes through the real estate or these other advanced moves that the wealthy do all the time. And then you run it through an infinite banking, accredited investor banking plan. And this trifecta is very implementable by the average dude, but it's the complete opposite than what my parents taught me and
Sure.
what people talk about in the Kipo clan. But this trifecta, when combined, is very, very powerful and it changes lives. Um, but you have to be uncomfortable getting off the beaten path because nobody
Mhm.
is doing this in the Kipo
Right,
clan around you.
right. So probably if you're in the basement of your thing, it's probably not where you wanna where you wanna start.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm all for everybody getting ahead in life, but
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not going to be on this earth long enough. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think to me, I was there as a corporate employee working long hours, and I remember watching my bank account creep up like $3,000 every
Mhm.
month, and all my life energy went to saving that 3 or 4,000, and then they went to 5,000, six
Mhm.
thousand a month, right? But I remember that grind,
Yeah.
and it's like everything is working against you, right? As a W-2 employee or even as a business owner, you're paying the highest amount of taxes.
Mhm.
You're getting access to just the sloppy second stuff that the institutions want you to get access to. And it's hard to get out of that rat race within the rat race.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, yeah, exactly. You're basically paying the state and federal government and local government. You're paying them for the right to work. I mean, literally,
Yeah,
they're taking a
I
chunk
mean,
of
when
your
you say it
money.
like that,
They're
John, it
taking
makes
a
me even
chunk of
more
your money.
depressed.
Yeah, seriously. They're taking a chunk of your money for the privilege, for you to have the
Yeah.
privilege of working.
I mean, the 401k, for example,
Mm.
like, don't get me wrong, it is I'm not giving tax advice here,
Yeah,
but yeah, it is deferred, right? That's the cool part of the 401k. But what people don't realize is at the end, you got to take that money out and eat it.
yeah,
And you got to
yeah,
pay your taxes, and you're essentially giving the government a blank check to tax you at whatever the heck rate they want to in the
yeah,
future.
yeah, and not to
Um,
mention if you need to take out anything early, they just completely take you to the cleaners.
yeah, but I think I like the idea of 401ks, right? Because it's kind of a forced piggy bank for
Sure,
people.
yeah,
Again,
yeah,
99% of people are in the basement. They
mhm,
can't keep their grubby hands off their own money. So they need to have this mechanism where
yeah,
it's locked up and they can't get it. That's why I think a lot of people should buy a house to live in because they could pay their mortgage first and then
yeah,
they go spend the rest. Like,
uh-huh,
I mean, they're kind of financially like children.
mhm,
But there are a lot of people out there that can save good amount of money and they're
yeah.
very good financial stewards of their wealth. And they just they need to understand that they kind of need to go around the kitty turnstiles that are put in place for most people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thanks so much, Lane. This has been fascinating. All of Lane's information and books will be below this video. But before we go, just remind people again about what you do.
Yeah, they can go to Amazon, check out the book, The Wealth Elevator. If they pick up a copy and take a screenshot of the nice review and send it to team@thewealthelevator.com, we'll hook them up with the MP3 and PDF version. So the PDF now you can throw in the ChatGPT, ask your own questions of it, of course. Or if you're like me and you can't read too well, the MP3s are just there, so I can read it to you.
Excellent. Well, listen, thanks again, Lane. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all again very soon. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks for having me, John.
Absolutely.